Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Tower. So today's video is going to be a playtesting video. I realize I haven't done one of this in quite some time now. So I'm really excited to get back into it, especially with the revamp in tournaments. Now that we are doing tier 17 plus, my tournament runs are no longer very long, and therefore I'm able to, do multiple runs of a tournament if I so chose to. So what are we going to do in this tournament? Well, let's have a look at the battle conditions. There's orb and death ray resistance. So our primary method of dealing with enemies is, I guess, nerfed a little bit. Knockback resistance is also there. This is going to be problematic when we get commanders, especially with armored battle conditions. So we are going to take a lot more hits on the enemies before we can start dealing damage to them. And I presume it's going to be the case that towards the end of the run, vampires would probably be the one that gets me today. Vampires or rays, I guess, especially with the knockback resistance. Those enemies with high mass, they're just going to come into my tower and eventually, overrun me. This is going to be true when we get a commander. So commander spawn's probably a bit more dangerous today. And we also have basics ultimate. Now, looking at this set of battle conditions, I think the one redeeming factor that we have is that there are no enemy ultimate battle conditions, which means that if we have permanent black hole, all the basic enemies are basically taken care of. So what I wanted to try for this particular playtesting video is to see whether or not I can make EHP work in tier 17. So let me just quickly run you through my build. For the EHP run, what I'm going to be using is Havoc Bringer and Shrink Ray. No reason I'm using Havoc Bringer. Ideally I would like Astral Deliverance, however, as you can see, not enough reroll shards. I don't really have the attack speed substat, which I really need over here, so that's why I'm using the Havoc Bringer. That being said, I'm only at epic rarity and I think 20% efficiency, so I'm not expecting that this is going to play a very big role in dealing with or in giving me a lot of stat boost. So I'm not really going to bother too much about the cannons S mod. However, for the primary mod, I'm going to be using Shrink Ray, mainly because of the knockback resistance, so lowering the mass I guess would help with holding the enemies back. I'm also going to be running with Galaxy Compressor and Pulsar Harvester for the level reductions. With the changes to the version 27 tournaments, level reductions I guess go to 0 after some point, so I think Pulsar Harvester would be a pretty strong option to have. And so if you look at the substats of both of my Shrink Ray and my Astral Deliver, my Havoc Bringer, they are more geared towards just having a lot of bullets, having a lot of bounce shots to hopefully just spread the level reductions across the enemies. I'm also going to be running with Orbital Augment because there will be a lot less damage without the amplifying strikes and without the project funding. So I guess having percentage damage would be pretty good. For the S mod on my cannon slot, on my armor slot, I'm contemplating between Space Displacer and Negative Mass Projector. So Negative Mass Projector actually has at epic rarity a 1% damage and speed reduction, which I think would be pretty useful. However, we are boom boom people, so I'm going to be using the Space Displacer build. because I'm using Space Displacer, I actually need quite a fair bit of stuns for this build to potentially work. So I have gone with landmine chance on my Space Displacer as well as my orbital augment, bringing my total landmine chance to, where is it, 43%. So hopefully we get a lot of landmines, which means we get a lot of inner landmines, which means that we boom a lot more. And for the cores, I managed to get a chronofield speed reduction substat on my harmony conductor, so this is how it looks like now. But because I'm using my primordial collapse for farming, it actually has farming substats. In terms of the substats that are different over here compared with my typical dimension core build, my dimension core is actually using the speed reduction as well as the chronofield duration. However, there's no ultimate weapon duration battle condition for today, so really all that's missing from all of these three substats instead of golden tower is just having chain lightning quantity and chain lightning chance. But since this is an EHP build, I think it's not going to affect me too badly. And yeah, so this is how my setup is going to look like. In terms of the run, I would have to upgrade my shockwave size to be, I think, 2.15. That is the shockwave size I need for 69 meter range, and this would be the range that I think I would use. I mean, we could go for a smaller range, however, it's probably not going to be very viable, mainly because enemies are just going to hoard up very quickly, and you know, I'm going to run the risk of my wall breaking too early. Overcharge comes in and then takes out my energy shields and all that bad stuff. So I think we'll stick with like 70 meter range. At this range, my inner landmines are going to be somewhat on the inside, so that's fine with me, because once the enemies start hoarding up in my black holes, that's when the inner landmines will start doing their job of controlling enemies as they approach. It also runs with, let's see, 8 seconds of black hole duration downtime, so hopefully having the Ancestral Galaxy Compressor is going to help with getting permanent black hole. And my Poison Swamp is, well, I've got slightly over 3 permanent swamps, so hopefully we get a lot of stuns from there. And yeah, I'm interested to see how the results will go. So if you're unfamiliar with the typical tournament playtesting kind of things, I do the run. I set up the run and then we check in at regular intervals. Most of it will be sped up, but after I'm done with this run, I would do a second run with my typical tournament setup, which is more damage focused, and we can compare just the overall wave count differences. For both of my runs, I'm going to be using exactly the same setup in terms of my enhancements. So we are running 1.56 on the level skip plus. Recovery package would be at 3.0. Health enhancements at 3.2, 3.3, op size at 2.0, and damage enhancements at 3.3, attack speed at 1.6. So there wouldn't be any changes to my enhancement plus between the two setups. I think this would allow me to isolate the effect of how important or how viable running something with EHP would be in this current meta. So without further ado, I guess we can get started with the tournament. Okay, let's get started with the first run. I forgot to mention earlier, in terms of my chips, I will be using attack and ally, simply because I don't want more enemies than I have to deal with. And for my bots, it's the typical kind of tournament setup. So I need flame bot for the damage reduction, for my overcharge enemies, and Thunderbolt is just there for the generic extra crowd control and stunts on the enemies. In terms of my card setup, I'll just quickly run through the cards that I'm using. I'll be running with enemy balance for today, mainly because the permanent black hole is going to be there, hopefully, and it's probably going to allow me to get a lot more bounce shots off onto enemies. Especially for this build, I think it would be very important. And so let's get started with this run. So notice that I'm at 140 waves over here. I actually did a run before this where I forgot to put in my chips. I forgot to change my chips and my bots. So this would be the correct run. Let's go. Okay, so let me quickly talk you guys through the setup. So typically for this tournament runs, I would just start off by maxing out my level skips. This should max out by wave, I'm going to say wave 60 or so. Okay, this is done. Yep, wave 50 we have maxed out. Damage is maxed out. My Poison Swarm stun is on as well. In terms of the target priority for today, I will be running with elites on top, followed by bosses, and just closest after. Because permanent black hole is going to be there, so I don't think any of these enemies would be too dangerous to deal with. Fleets, we can't really target them, so yeah, just elites, boss, closest. Hopefully this works out. And yeah, so I think, oh right, and my orbs would be at 60 meters. Because I'm running 2.0 on the orb size, I think it's enough to get a few sneaky hits on the bosses when they get stunned by the space displacer mines. So this should be good enough for this tournament at least. Okay, so all of this is set up. I would probably just fast forward this next portion and catch up with you guys towards the end of the run. Alright guys, we are back at wave 1000. So I think I should just quickly scroll through my stats so everyone can have a look at it. Nothing special. My crit factor is a bit lower than usual because of the bounce shot build. With this build, I'm currently running at 85% bounce shots with maximum targets of 11 targets. Health is nothing to, again, shout out about. At this level of damage that the enemies have, it's definitely one shot on my wall. The only thing that I'm able to tank would be overcharge hits. So I definitely feel a lot safer having the permanent black hole. And as you can see, my level skips are almost down to 0 already. That's to be expected. I think we should expect something like 320 or 330 level skips at the end of the day. So yeah, quickly just go through everything. And these are my ultimate weapon stats. So I think the only thing that would really matter in this setup would be just having a lot of poison swarms for poison swarm plus to quickly take off on the enemies, and also just having a good black hole. In terms of my overall setup, there's a few other defensives that I have. I mean, Primordial Collapse has a damage reduction. On top of that, I'm also running Landmine Stun. Hang on, am I running Landmine Stun? Yes, I'm running Landmine Stun. So with the Mastery, there's a chance for enemies to be missing me with their attack. So hopefully Rays would miss me. Hopefully also the in addition to missing, the Harmony Conductor is also going to give me a chance to miss. And we can already see, like at this level, the bounce shots are starting to stack up with one another. So I think this would be a point where hopefully the bosses are going to start having a bit more damaged out on them. As you can see, the commander has buffed all of these enemies over here, but because I've got permanent black hole, it's actually pretty safe. I don't have to worry too much about these enemies. I remembered now that I actually need to get 2.15 on my shockwave size, so let's quickly do that. This would ensure that my shockwave size is just at my range line. Alright, back to the fast forwarding segment. Okay, we are wave 1310 and I've already lost my wall. I'm not sure what hit my wall, but as you can see, just all of the lacking of the damage multipliers that I have with this setup is giving me quite a lot of problems. We are already down to second wind being popped at wave 1330. So even though like the EHP build, you know, ideally I should be getting a lot of bounce shots off on the bosses, clearly just not having enough damage is probably a big problem in tier 17. But let's just let the run play out. Just to keep things consistent across the 2 rounds, I'm not going to time my demon mode and nuke. I'm just going to let it automatically play out by itself. With this run, we can already see that multiple fleet enemies are on my screen at the same time, and that commander is just buffing a whole bunch of enemies over there, which, you know, safe but not very safe at the same time. So probably not, probably it's safe to say at this stage that it's not going to be as viable as or EHP is not going to be as viable as a damage build, but let's just let all the runs play out before we make that conclusion. Okay, wave 1480 demon mode has popped. We might not even make it to wave 1800 at this rate. Alright guys, we are at wave 1538. Nuke is almost about to pop. There we go. So I think with this build, the main issue is that when a commander enemy comes, because I lack the increased damage profile that typical damage items would provide, it's going to result in me being unable to kill the elite enemies, and based on what I can see, it's the Ray enemies that are basically popping my tower off. So yeah, as expected, we are unable to hit wave 1800 with this build, and soon, once this run ends, we will go into the damage build and we see how that performs relative to this build. Okay guys, it's wave 16:45 and nuke just popped. So it wouldn't be long now before the run ends. Based on what I can see, a ray is going to get me at some point. We're just not dealing enough damage. Even at this kind of low wave health, I'm just not dealing enough damage with this build. And I'm just taking damage from multiple sources at this stage. So overall viability of this build, not as good as I would have liked it to be, but that's kind of to be expected. I think now that we are in tier 17 plus, it's kind of silly to think that some form of EHP would be viable. I think with any EHP build, it's probably the case that all we are going to be able to tank is just that few extra hits of the overcharge enemy. That gives us enough time to dish out the damage that we need in order to get rid of the overcharge. But you know, it's a learning lesson, and I think the run's just about to end. Yeah, unless the boss misses me. How did we manage to kill that boss? There we go. So wave 1662, currently at rank 2, and these are the stats. So I'll just quickly scroll through the stats, you can have a look at it. And somehow we hit AC damage with electrons. Electrons dealing percentage damage is definitely very good. We can see over here that black hole damage is also very significant. Just having the permanent black hole is pretty good. That being said, orbs and electrons, even with the orb resistance for today's battle conditions, orbs are still keeping up with my electron damage, so that's nice to know. Okay, let's get started with the second run. Okay, so this is the setup for my second run. The modules are the only thing that I have changed between this run and the previous one. So for this run, in terms of the setup, I'm going to be running with the setup. Yep. So for this run, in terms of the setup, I'm going to be running with a different range. I'm going to be using the typical 98 meter range, and the way that I get there is I just put range over here to 0 and max out this range in the run. I'm also going to be using 3.35 on the shockwave size, and typically this has worked out pretty well for me in my milestone run. So this is the typical tournament setup that I would use. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started with the run. I mean, it does look like Verman is going to beat us in this tournament, but we should be able to come in. Let's save ourselves the heartache later on and look through the bracket. It's so competitive in Legends these days. Okay, we can't see this person. Let's look below. Okay, this is fine. This is fine. And right, so hopefully we can get to around 2000-ish waves. That should secure us a second place finish. I don't think we'll be beating Verman, but that's fine. We can't win every tournament. So let's get started with this run. So as usual with my tournament runs, the first few waves are just going to be leveling up everything. Ideally, I would run this tournament without enemy balance. However, just to keep things consistent across the two runs, I'm going to be leaving the enemy balance card on. Unless I'm very close to Verman at the end of this run, I don't foresee I would do a third run where I take out the enemy balance card. So whatever we see in these two runs, that would be my actual tournament for this particular bracket. So we want to max out our shockwave size 3.35. We want to max out our range 98 meter range. From here I have to toggle my orbs out a little bit, so I think we can put the orbs over here. And that should be fine. Maybe not. So there would be a lot of bosses later on, and that's perfectly fine. I think under this setup, the space displacer mines that I have, I would be using them primarily to stun any fast enemies that might come in too close because of the knockback resistance, and also because we do not have permanent black hole for today's tournament. I'm going to have to put ranged and fast above elites and boss, just to ensure that, you know, I don't take any sort of chip damage from these two enemies here. But other than that, everything is going to be identical to the previous run. So let's let the run play out, and I'll check back in with you guys towards the later part of this run. Alright guys, we're back at wave 1500. So I think in the previous run, this was where I had already popped my second win and demon mode. And as you can see, it's still very safe in this current run. I mean, we have a lot more damage, from like 100 over trillion to 2.1 quadrillion damage. So I think it's safe to conclude that an EHP build in Legends Tournament is definitely not viable, at least in version 27, after the change to tournaments where it's now tier 17 plus instead of tier 14 plus. In terms of the main difficulty of the EHP build that I experienced, it's mostly that we are not able to kill any of the buffed enemies once they get buffed by the commanders. It's not to say that I have a lot of damage in this current setup. My damage is still quite lacking. However, I think because we are only able to tank overcharge hits, as long as we have enough EHP to tank the overcharge hits, that's enough. Thereafter, we should just focus on getting more damage, especially with the recent nerf to ELS. So as you can see, my ELS is now 0. I presume it would be very similar to the previous run. We would be getting about 326 level skips of each type. Okay, we just lost our wall at wave 1650. I presume it would have been from a buff ray from the previous commander. But thankfully this is a saboteur, so nothing to worry about. As you can see, an overcharged enemy has just come along, and it has taken out my energy shields. So this is to be expected. I mean, we lost our wall, so the game would reward us with an overcharged enemy, obviously. Now we have a second commander that is entering. Hopefully it doesn't buff any elite enemies. But even if it does, we can already conclude that we are doing better under this setup compared to the previous run. And ideally, I would have liked to do this tournament without enemy balance. Okay, for some reason, my wall is still up, but I lost second wind, and I'm not sure how that happened. It definitely must be a bug, right? How can my wall be up and I lose second wind? It doesn't make sense. Nonetheless, we are out of intro sprint, so I think the thing to do now would be to just let the run play out naturally, and we fast forward to the point where demon mode gets popped. Okay, 1804, demon mode is now popped. We are now dealing 13.1 quadrillion damage, so hopefully this is enough. I mean, the game is still quite buggy. We can see that like the enemies, they're just spinning around for no reason. They're just jumping around. I think it's something to do with black hole and shockwave interactions, but not complaining. Pushing the enemies out it helps with knockback resistance. Okay, as you can see, the commander has buffed a few rare enemies and they're just not dying. Thankfully, I managed to get a Death Defy, but even with the Death Defy, for instance, this commander over here, it's just not dying. So, and this is with 815 little Q of damage and 48 AB of enemy health. Commanders are really difficult to deal with. I think what I need to focus on would be to get some of the enemy health labs going at some point, so as to be able to deal with these enemies slightly better. Okay, we are at wave 2015, and I believe this is where the run ends. There we go. So we managed to get to wave 2018. No way I'm beating Verman. Not sure how he's able to get so many waves, probably a lot of damage. Nonetheless, let's have a look at the two runs. Clearly we can see that just running obviously the strategy matters, right? Running more damage as opposed to going EHP has given me about let's say 20% more waves. So I guess from this I can conclude that at least where my tower is at, EHP is just not viable, and having more damage is definitely the way to go. So hopefully you guys liked the video. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.